So I'll get to Terry's introduction here. Terry Johnson is an attorney who has successfully practiced criminal defense with a specialty in self-defense and firearms law. Terry went to law school at Western Michigan, Thomas M. Cooley School of Law, where he earned his Juris Doctor. Shortly after law school, Terry opened his own legal practice and has successfully defended hundreds of clients. He is currently licensed in Michigan, in the state, and in federal court. He's become a legal subject matter expert on firearms and self-defense, having appeared on all major media outlets in the Detroit area and several national news networks. In addition to this, Terry also holds firearm training instruction certification from the NRA in basic pistol, personal protection inside the home, and he's a certified trainer with the United States Concealed Carry Association. It's also important to Terry to be involved in the community. He currently is elected to his local school board and teaches at 2 reserve police officer academies. Currently, Terry is working as Vice President of Legal Operations for Firearms Legal Protection and holds a Bachelor of Science degree from Michigan State University. We won't hold that against you. All right, so come on up, Terry.
Bigger when you're here, so how's everybody? How's everybody? All right, let's talk about extreme risk protection order. I'll try and stay by the mic. All right, this is a proposed bill, so it's not in place yet. This is one of the reasons Mike wants us out, and you're going to hear more from Dean as well about some of these bills that are here. So let me say a couple of things. There's something you don't like, I want you to move. It's okay, I'm an attorney, I won't take it personally, I promise. All right, let me see if I can get this to work here. All right, so what's the purpose of this bill, right? Here's the first thing that's in the proposed bill. Issuance of restraining orders prohibiting certain people from possessing firearms. Ooh. Right. Here's the interesting thing about this. This is just about firearms. I'm going to get into that in a couple of moments, why this is so dangerous. It orders and surrenders the seizure of restrained individuals from firearms. Provides certain duties, etc., that the government can do, and provides penalties, which we'll talk about. So let's get into the bill real quick. Who can file an action under 156? This is the Senate's proposed bill. All right. Not anyone, but the spouse of the defendant. How many folks are married in here? Okay, how many are happily married? Every hand better, that's right. There you go, especially if your spouse is here, right? Here's the dangerous part. So your spouse can file an action. What about the former spouse? I didn't hear you. That's right. For those of you who have multiple ex-wives or husbands, one of them can get mad at you and file an action. Let's talk about a few other folks on this list. Anyone that has a child together. Okay? What about a dating relationship? Let me tell you, they've actually gone as far in this bill to define dating relationship. Let me tell you what it is. It consists of frequent, intimate associations primarily characterized by the expectation of affectional involvement. So if you're married, this doesn't apply, right? No, just kidding. So we understand what this means, right? But I don't quite understand how to explain it to someone, which is going to be an issue as you see coming up. What it's not is a casual relationship or fraternization between two individuals in a business or social context. So let me break it down for my young folks. So anybody older than me, which is probably very few people in here, except for Rick Ector, of course. So if you go out on a date and you kiss someone, do you fall under the first one or the second one? Second. Notice the confusion in the room just on the definition of dating relationship. Friends with benefits. Great question, we'll get to them. But as long as you have a child in common. All right, let's take it a little bit further. Anyone who resides with you or has resided with the defendant. So let me ask this question. How many of you have ever had a roommate? Right. How many of you, and you don't have to raise your hands, have left on bad terms with that roommate? What do you think this gets to open up?
They can sue?
They can file the claim for the red
It's
flag.
crazy. It's kind of big.
Yeah,
It's crazy. Let's talk about a couple of us. I mean, think about this for a moment. If I've lived with you back in college, 15, 20 years ago,
30 years ago.
Rick was in college 30 years ago, is what he wants to say. So here's the thing. If you've lived with somebody back then, they, under this bill, can file an action against you for red flag. Okay? Couple of other things. A family member. Come on. Let's back up. Let me tell you, they've actually defined family member. Who is a family member? Well, a parent. How many of you have parents that don't agree with your Second Amendment following? There's probably a few in here. Yeah. What about
We're good.
a son or daughter? How many of you have siblings that you just don't get along with? Who don't like the Second Amendment? So under this bill, this sibling, whether you have seen them in 10 years, 20 years, whatever, they can file under this action. A grandparent, a grandchild, an uncle or aunt, and finally, a first cousin, not a second cousin. But I want you to think about this for a minute.
It's proposed.
Look at this list, and I want you to really take a look at what about stepkids, step-parents? They're not on here. This is the craziest thing I've ever seen. What's that? Not on there. But if you're an uncle or aunt, you can get back at them. Law enforcement officers can file an action. And they actually define that. What's a law enforcement officer? These are the agencies. So if you want to look at a county sheriff, a state police, or a police department, and let me define what law enforcement officer means. An individual deployed by these agencies to enforce the criminal laws of the state. So let me ask you a question. Can a motor carrier officer for the state police file this against you?
No.
What about a reserve officer? See how this is kind of broad? It gets even better though. Now, the question becomes how under this bill do you file? You have to go to your circuit court. How many people here live in Wayne County? Okay. So you've got to deal with that court. So imagine going down there and they make it nice and easy for you because you know what they do? They give you a form, so you don't have to fill anything out other than check boxes. So, how are they to know that I've had a dating relationship with you if I don't have to explain it? That I'm a second cousin and not a first cousin? And, more importantly, all you do is check boxes. There's no need for verification. And what else do you have to put on there? This is the biggest part. It's necessary because you pose a significant risk of personal injury to yourself or others by possessing a firearm. Now, think about this. How many of you know that flamethrowers are legal in the state of Michigan? Yeah. I'm going to ask this again. How many know that flamethrowers are legal? Now you know, right? Yeah. Okay, great. So if I say to someone, I'm going to take my flamethrower and I'm going to light your ass up. If I say that, red flag would not apply.
It's not a firearm.
What if I have an anthrax factory in my basement? I'm good to go because this only applies to people that are what? Possessing firearms. I can threaten you with a knife, I can threaten you with anything, but the moment I use a gun, they want to come after our Second Amendment rights. Here's the other part, and I'm telling you, this is very dangerous. The plaintiff, which is the person that's filling this out, who wants to get the red flag law on you, they have to identify any firearms that you own. Now, if they know serial numbers, great. If they don't, they can say it's a black gun, that's good enough. And I'm going to come back to that in a few minutes, and you'll understand why that is so dangerous. Their address is kept secret. So, the interesting thing about that is, if I got a first cousin that I don't know, who gets mad at me because there's a post on Facebook, they get to go and fill this form out. And what happens after that? Got to tell you one thing first. See these categories here? How many of you have a CPL? Outstanding. If you have a CPL, they have to list on the form that you have a concealed pistol license. What about this? If you're required to carry a gun as a condition of employment, and I just don't mean law enforcement. What if you work for Brinks, as an example? What if you're a security guard? For whatever it is, if you carry a gun as part of your employment, that has to be listed by the plaintiff. Law enforcement and corrections officers as well. So if any of these categories you fall into, that goes on the form. I'm going to tell you why in a few minutes. Again, they must state this in the complaint. So Jim Mikowski, wait, Jim. Nobody boo. I'm just kidding. So Jim Mikowski, if I decide that he's a danger to himself, I can list on here that he carries a gun, he's got a CPL, and he carries it as part of his employment. Now, here's a priority with this is given to the courts. And let me tell you what I mean. This takes precedent over every other thing. Think about that. Not your divorce, not your PTO, not your murder trial. This takes priority according to the bill. The bill says that this must take priority and you must have a hearing under this standard. It's called reasonable cause. Very good. What's reasonable cause? I have 1, 2, at least 3 lawyers in here, and I don't think any of us can tell you what a reasonable cause is, other than an extremely low standard. Let me give you an example. For those of you who have ever done jury duty, it's beyond a reasonable doubt. I'd like to stress that as 95 or higher percentage. There's this thing called probable cause. Any police officers in here? Okay, I know you don't want to raise your hands. I'm going to help you what probable cause means. No, I'm just kidding you. Probable cause is about 50-50, a little more than 50%. And then there's this thing called reasonable suspicion. That runs probably 25 to about 45%. I would estimate, and Jim and Dean, tell me if you disagree with me, reasonable cause is probably below 20%. Who knows? So now they're putting in a standard that's not even legal to judge you whether or not you should have your firearms. They can also take testimony and, oh, by the way, I forgot to mention this, you're not there. So my first cousin, my ex-wife, they can just do whatever they want to do, go down to the court, check boxes on a form, tell them I have a CPL, and they get to say whatever they want about me. What else will the court consider? Well, any documents. How many people in here have social media accounts? How many of you have seen some folks on social media with a gun? Not necessarily doing anything wrong. Can you imagine your ex going in front of the judge saying, "Judge, look at these pictures. He's got a gun." Not he's pointing it at someone, not he's threatening someone, he has a gun. Not a flamethrower, but a gun. If you've ever had previous threats or actions, so let's put that into perspective. Let's say it's thrown out this time. They can still turn around and say, "Judge, this is the second time this has come in front of you." Yeah, there is no clean slate here. And any other factor the court believes is relevant. What does that mean? That means if the judge thinks because you've got a golden retriever, you're a danger, you are now a danger. But I hate to tell you, it's only going to get worse. They have to, they being the plaintiff, now listen to this, clearly establish immediate and imperishable injury will result if a delay or adverse action happens before the extreme risk protection order is issued. What does that mean? That means they've got to be doing something right now to get the gun out of your hand. Right now, that you're going to do something to yourself or others. Now notice I keep using the term gun, firearm. They don't care if you got a flamethrower. They don't care if you're building a nuclear bomb in the basement. They don't care. They just want a firearm out of your hands. And we're going to come back to this standard in a minute. Now, what does this mean for any of you in here? Any of you who may end up getting this filed against you? Well, the first thing you've got to keep in mind is, again, the standard behind this. You have to prove a negative. Let me give you an example. In most courtrooms, when you go in, it's on the plaintiff to prove their case. Let me give you an example. Anybody know something going on in Washington called an impeachment trial? Whose burden is it to prove what Donald Trump may have done? Is it his burden to prove he's innocent, or is it the House's burden to prove that he's guilty? It's the House, right? In any courtroom you go into, even if it's a PPO, personal protective order, guess what happens? You go in, and it's up to me to show why I need a personal protection order against this person. And the judge will say, okay, as the defendant, I say nothing. I don't have to say anything. The burden is all on the plaintiff. Not in red flag. So now I have to prove that I'm not a threat to myself or others. Let me put it to you this way. How would you like to go home and your significant other say, you walk in and she says, you're having an affair. How do you prove you're not having an affair? She just says, you are having an affair. Now, I'm not going to give you names. I'm not going to show you pictures. I'm not going to show you text messages. I'm not going to show you anything. You now prove to me you are not having an affair. How many of you think you can do that?
Be a man to tell her you are.
We're going to have a talk with him. We may have our first red flag candidate. But I really want you to think about that for a minute. How do you prove that you're not crazy? And by the way, you're proving it to a judge that's not a psychiatrist or a psychologist. Good thing is, you get 14 days to have a hearing from the time that red flag is served on you. 14 days. Plenty of time for you to get everything together, right? Get an attorney, get all your documents together. Oh, but wait a minute, you don't know what you're fighting. You get one opportunity, though, if they find you responsible, I'll call it. You get one opportunity to modify or rescind it. So think about it. There's this process called appeals. Even in certain things like traffic court, you have a right to an appeal. So I can appeal a ticket that I'm not happy with or the judge's decision. I can go to circuit court. I can go all the way up to the Court of Appeals. If the Supreme Court will take it, I can go there. Not here. One time over the course of 1 year to change, modify, or rescind the order. Whoa! During this time, you're not allowed to possess or purchase firearms. Can't apply for a CPL, and by the way, if you have one, it'll be suspended or revoked. Oh, that's not the best of it, because guess what? You have 24 hours to now surrender, once you've been served, all firearms within your possession to law enforcement agencies. Now I want you to think about this for a minute. Just how much sense this makes. And maybe it's just me, but I'm a danger to myself or others, but you're going to give me 24 hours to take all my guns and take them to the police station. Now here's my question. What is that going to look like to someone sitting behind the counter if you have more than a couple of guns? Who's putting who in harm's way? Right? What's that? Lose them in a boating accident. There you go. But I really want you to think about the sense of this, because we're going to give you, you're crazy, you're going to harm yourself or others, we're going to give you 24 hours, give us all your guns. Right? If you don't, law enforcement will be able to come and seize them. Oh, they can't find them. Well, let's talk about this one thing I'm sure Dean's going to talk about at some point. This little thing in Michigan we call registration. So law enforcement can come and seize your firearms. And how do they do that? Oh, I forgot. One other thing. They put you in lien. They send a copy to the FBI and ATF. Now, let me just tell you so we're all on the same page. This is before the hearing. So, how many of you believe if you've been put in, well, let me ask it a different way. How hard is it to take something, A, out of lien? But more importantly, how hard is something to take out of the background check that they run on you? What, Mike, I'm drawing a blank. When you run your background check, they're, NICS check, thank you. This goes into NICS. And if anyone has ever tried to pull something out of NICS, Jim, how hard is it? How long? Years to get something out of NICS. And by the way, if someone puts this on you, do you think there's no order in here telling them that they have to change it once it's out? It's a permanent stain. Right, Tanisha? It's an inside joke. Okay. If you don't do this, they have power over you. They being the court, you can be locked up for 93 days and pay a $500 fine. Here's the interesting thing. A lot of people say, why the 3 days? Why not just 90? Because, believe it or not, misdemeanors can be habitualized. So if it's 93 days, that means if you violate and do it again, they can get you for more, maybe a year. Maybe the next time it's a felony. If it's a 90-day misdemeanor, you can do it one time and do it again, it's another 90, etc. See the wisdom behind this? Now, something else you have to do as well. After you've taken your guns to the local police station, you now have to go to the court and give them a piece of paper verifying that you have turned all your guns over. I mean, think about that for a minute. Some crazy person comes out, says, I'm a danger to myself, I take all my guns to the police station, now I gotta go to the court and say, yeah, I turned everything in. Because if you don't, the clerk's gonna inform the law enforcement agency, and guess what they get to do? They get, well, close. They make a good faith effort to make sure you don't have any more guns. Remember that registration thing? And I'm going to ask a simple question regarding registration. In Michigan, what if I sell you my gun and you never turn in the RI-60? And they put a red flag out on me. And they go through this and say, well, wait a minute, he owns 10 guns. We only found 7. And I'm going to turn and say, well, wait a minute, I sold them to Whitney over there, and she didn't, yeah, right. They get to come in my house and look around. What's that? Most people don't. The statement was, what if you keep the paperwork? But again, the problem is this whole registration, how all of this ties back together. Because if you're in another state without registration, how would they know? Now, by the way, there's more. At any time, I'll say this again, not for any reason, at any time, law enforcement or the plaintiff can file an affidavit alleging you still have your physical CPL or you have firearms. And if the judge, and here's the interesting part, If probable cause exists, which is, again, remember about 50-50, if probable cause exists, the judge can issue a warrant for the locations to be searched. So let's go back to that ex-spouse. Maybe she's not happy you're behind on child support. Maybe she's not happy that you've got a new boyfriend or girlfriend or a boo, right? You got someone new and they don't like that. You see how dangerous this thing is? All right, remember this group that I talked about earlier? How am I doing on time, Mike? Okay? Okay. Remember this group we talked about earlier? I'll just refresh your memory. You got a CPL, you're required to carry a gun as part of your employment, law enforcement, corrections, Department of Corrections. Remember that group? Guess what happens if you're part of that group? Oh, they do a little bit more. The court must inform the employer if they know the employer. So think about this. What if you're a nurse? You're not required to have a gun as part of your duties, but you've got a CPL. How many people do you think are going to keep that nurse on their staff or at that hospital knowing that there's a red flag on it? Is that not dangerous? Not that you've done anything, because remember, this is reasonable cause, which we don't know what it is. We just know it's a low standard. But how many jobs now will be lost because, again, that ex has gone out and said, well, works at Henry Ford Hospital. It's not a condition that I carry my gun there, but why in the world would you have to go to my employer? I can see maybe law enforcement, maybe. All right. If they seize your firearms, because here's the other beauty of this bill. If they don't come up to you right away, and oh, I forgot to mention this, you can be told orally as well. It doesn't have to be in writing. Yeah. You can be told orally, but once you receive the paper, so for example, if I can't find you for 3 days for whatever reason, let's say you're out in the country, you come back, I come to your house, the red flag order has already been in place. If I want to, I can seize those guns right then, because it's been more than 24 hours. Before I put that up, how many of you take good care of your guns? Great. Well, you get to turn them over to law enforcement, they get to store them for you. And they store them till you're no longer a prohibited person. But let me ask a question. What do you think's gonna, do you think they're gonna, clean them and oil them? No, they're not. What else do you think? Those nice guns that you get with no nicks, no scratches. How do you think? What's that? They're going to toss them in a pile. Oh, Dean says they're liable for damage. Of course not. The other part of this is you get two options. They get to hold on to it until what? Until you're no longer a prohibited person, which we'll talk about. Or you transfer to a licensed dealer. So if you don't think you're going to get them back, you can come see Mike or any of these other folks. Firing line, don't want to forget anybody, uncoil, recoil, everyone. Again, I'm not trying to pick on anyone. You can see them and transfer them to them. But let me ask a question. What if someone else claims the firearm? So let's say I left my gun at Jim's house. He just wanted to play with my gun, and he gets this red flag, and now my gun is gone. I get to go to court, I gotta go to court. And I gotta say that's my gun. And I gotta prove it. Here's the key here. If the court determines I'm the lawful owner, so, what else does this mean for your firearms? What if someone lives with you who's under red flag? The living hell, as I like to call it, as it relates to your firearms. So now, let's say my daughter has gotten a red flag. She lives with me. They come in my house, they take all the firearms. Again, they don't know whose firearms they are. She may only own one. But they take all the firearms. I want my firearms back. Let's say I get them back. Let me tell you what you have to do. You have to keep them locked securely in a box or container. You have to keep them in a place where a reasonable person will believe they're secure, and you have to use a locking device. What's the problem with this? That court has no jurisdiction over me. So how can a court that has no jurisdiction over me, but has jurisdiction over the red flag person, now tell me how to store my guns? If you didn't hear that, he said they can't, but the person who has the red flag will probably be punished. So if the ex comes over or say gets angry because, hey, you get that new girlfriend, guess what? The ex can now say, you know, they've got guns there. The police aren't going to give you notice they're coming. And they search and they see that it's not locked, not properly stored. Guess what happens? All right. When does this end? Under this. Well, here's the interesting part. The plaintiff or the court on its own, that's the scary thing, can come back and extend it. Here's the key. One or more extensions. Not just one extension, one or more. Because under this bill, I can come back again and again and again and again. And if I don't come back, maybe the judge just doesn't like me. The judge doesn't have to do anything. The judge can do it on their own. And oh, by the way, you can be at that hearing if you want. Now, I often hear, what if the plaintiff is lying? There are some penalties in here, but we'll talk about that real quickly in about 6 minutes. All right? Well, if the plaintiff is making a false statement, well, they put penalties in. I'm going to talk about that and why that's the craziest thing in the world. First time is a misdemeanor, 93 days. Remember how I said that extra 3 days shows habitualization? The second one is a felony. And the third time is a 5-year felony. Right? But here's the thing. Now, I know this is a thought no one ever has, but I hate to tell you, people go to court and lie all the time. Yeah, I know. But here's the interesting thing. With this, I want you to think of a PPO. I've done hundreds of PPOs, probably more, probably close to thousands. But here's the interesting thing about that. I've yet to see any judge turn around and say, you're lying, and I'm going to lock you up. Because those charges have got to be brought by a prosecutor. And let me take that a step further. They got other things to deal with. And a judge's mentality is always this. Well, I know they were lying, but I don't want to stop other people from coming forward. So while these penalties are here, they're pretty much meaningless. Because I have yet, and I don't know, Jim, Dean, have you ever seen anyone locked up for lying on a PPO? 2 nevers, 3 nevers with me. All right, a couple other things. What's that? 15.
20, 21. So what's that? What's that about? 7 years?
A little younger than Rick's age, yeah. So, there are some alternatives out here real quickly, and then we'll turn it up over for questions I want you to think about. First of all, can we all agree this is a horrible proposal? Can we see the dangers behind it? So there are some other alternatives out here. You can remove the person from the gun. Now let me explain what I mean by that. Remove the person from the gun, not the gun from the person. Because if someone is a threat to themselves, and you take the guns away, are they still going to be a threat to themselves? Yes! So we've done nothing but take a gun away from them. Doesn't mean we didn't take the flamethrower, we didn't take the knives, we didn't take the anthrax. We just took the gun. This is a gun grab bill because it's not designed to help someone. Now you're really going to boo when I tell you this. I travel just about every week, but I flew back into Detroit the end of September last year, and I run into a lady by the name of Elizabeth Warren. I told her, I said, Miss Warren, I'm not going to argue with you here at the airport, but what you're proposing with red flag makes no sense. If you want to get people help, why don't you do like the state of Maine did and give the people help? Don't take the guns from the people, take the people from the guns. Everybody think that's the right thing? Yeah. You can also do a voluntary commitment. What do I mean by that? Someone has an issue, talk to them, get some counseling. Have them voluntarily go in. The other option is involuntary commitment. And there's a procedure to go for that. Now, here's the thing I want you to keep in mind as it relates to these two. The point we're trying to get across and what you're going to hear from the people who are so pro this bill, we got to keep the guns out of dangerous people's hands. Guess what? Everybody wants that. But how are you doing it? You get counseling? Nope. What do you get for this? You just get to screw us over some other way. We don't want you to injure yourself with a gun, but hey, if you blow up your basement making them get a meth lab, it's okay. You didn't use a gun. Those are a couple of options. I mentioned counseling, and I'm going to turn it over for questions at this point.
Which senators are pushing for this? What are their names?
Do you have that information? Dean will go over that, I think, in his presentation.
Wittenberg.
Okay. Mike has some literature to pass out regarding, once we're done, regarding who is pushing and supporting these bills. Okay. Got it.
Why would such a poor piece of legislation come up for a vote, period?
Great question. The question is, why would a poor piece of legislation come up for a vote? I'm going to give you 2 words. Anybody ever heard the name Michael Bloomberg? Anybody ever heard of the state of Virginia? This is why it's important. This is a gun grab bill that's disguised much like a wolf in sheep's clothing. Because if this was a legitimate bill, this would not just be about firearms. And everyone could get behind it. Oh, this is America. Yes. This turns due process on its head.
This is not a question, but this is an observation of everything you've done since the beginning. This looks like it's been taken right out of a Nazi playbook, right? Turning your coworker, turning your mother, turning your father, turning your daughter. This sounds like right out of the Nazi playbook. It really does.
Yeah, it's scary. I told you it was scary.
Yes, sir. How do you fight a gun-grabbing billionaire?
Easy. He gets one vote, and so do all of us. That's how you fight that. You transplant your representatives. Everybody that's running for Congress or anything in the state, raise your hand. See those hands back there? You go to those folks and say, we are not compromising on this. And if they get in, and no offense, they get in and don't do what we want them to do, we put them out. We put them out. We have to hold our representatives accountable. And I think all of them would agree with that.
Okay, my question is, every part of this is infringing on my right for the Second Amendment as a gun owner. How does this even get presented? They shouldn't even consider it. The Second Amendment says thou shall not be infringed. It's not negotiable. What's going on?
Well, it's like Dean said, it's gun control. And here's the thing. I sit on a school white dog, doesn't matter, I sit on Farmington Hill School Board, right? I love it when people always come up and they say the following, it's for the kids. Oh my God, it's for the kids. And you know what? I would love for each of you out here to get your kids and teach them about firearm safety, and let's show the other side. Because if our kids aren't taught about firearms and what's going on, things like this will pass.
It's a little self-serving as my wife is running for state representative, but...
Oh, I know, I saw your hands going, who's happening there?
But you mentioned how do we get by Michael Bloomberg. Michael Bloomberg is spending money. Candidates, I'm a blue-collar skilled tradesman. My wife is a full-time candidate right now. Candidates like us don't have the resources, and they need help. And to beat Michael Bloomberg, you've got to get good candidates elected. In order to get elected, they have to be able to fund their campaigns. It costs $8,000 for a mailer, and you can go on and on and on. They need your help. If you don't know your candidate stands for what you believe, find a candidate that stands for what you believe. And dig in your pocketbook, $10 like Burger King, and you went out to eat one today, $10. Give a candidate whatever you can give, $10, $20, go on a monthly plan, give them $10 a month. Whatever you can do to support a candidate so that they can get in office and represent you.
And let me say this, that's correct, because I'll tell you, when I ran for school board, I was so opposed to what you were saying, because again, we need to vote on values, but you know what? Unfortunately, he's 100% right. We have to put our money where our mouth is. No one's asking you to mortgage your house, sell your car. But you know what? $5 from everybody in here will go a long way for these candidates to help them get going and fight that billionaire.
Final question. When they
It's not the final, but we'll get there.
when a plaintiff gives testimony, are they under oath?
Great question. If the plaintiff gives testimony, are they under oath? I would assume they are, but again, from the standpoint of I'm under oath, I've lied, nothing's going to happen to me. What difference does it make?
Mr. Johnson?
Go green, yes. Jim Mikowski, the biggest Michigan State fan.
That was harsh. So, if someone gets an extreme risk protection order, this goes through, don't you think we can rely on the judges to protect us?
No. And let me help you real quick. And this is almost a interesting thing. You can't rely on the judges, and let me tell you something. You don't want to go to court alone. You know I'm Vice President of Firearms Legal, also a practicing attorney here. We're the only company that covers red flag. So if something happens to you, you call us, we'll have attorneys like Dean Greenblatt, Jim Mikowski, represent you, and guess what? We pay the bill. It's very simple. You do not want to go into court alone. I get a traffic ticket, I call one of these two guys, even if I know the judge. You know why? Because we get emotional. So see Spencer, raise your hand back there. See Spencer or any of the guys at Top Gun, if any of you want to sign up. Again, this is not what this is about tonight, but I'm just letting you know there's a way to protect yourself if this happens. I got time for 2 more questions. I got 1 and 2 and 3, and that's it.
In the proposal for the red flag laws, can you please tell me who proposed them, Democrat or Republican?
Democrat, Mallory McRoy, Victor Greenberg.
All right, Cameron, we got the gentleman right here, the last question.
Okay, I got it. So, the legislative branch brings this up. It passes. What's the judicial branch going to do about upholding this unconstitutional law? Because to be part of law enforcement, the sheriff's department, DEA, all those, you have to swear oath to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state you're a law enforcement officer in. So are they going to go against their oath, or are they going to be brought up on charges of treason?
Great question. So let me tell you how this works. You have organizations in this state like Michigan Gun Owners, Michigan Open Carry, MCRGO, all these gun organizations that come out here and they do the same thing. They fight for those rights. But you just can't go to the court and say, this is wrong. Somebody has got to bring a case. And that costs money. I hate to keep coming back to that word money, but someone asked about Bloomberg. This is why he's successful. He spins, but he only gets 1 vote like the rest of us. So, long story short, someone has got to bring a case, and you got to get a phenomenal attorney like Jim or Dean to handle it. So, last question, then we need to move on.
Hey, how you doing? My question is, now it's my understanding when, government officials take an oath, police and all that, that they're supposed to be holding to the Constitution or whatever their oath is. Now, if they break that oath, is there any kind of recourse for a judge or police? Because I don't understand what you're taking an oath for. And somebody breaks it, and it's like, oh well, whatever, and I do what I do, and you can't stop me because I'm pretty much, I got immunity, and if some kind of, recourse comes back, and all they can get is kicked out or fired at best.
So, let me say this, and we'll wrap the questions up. The main thing you want to take away from that, and we got to be very careful, even with the sanctuary cities, because here's the thing. They work both ways. What do I mean? There are some cities that are sanctuary cities for immigrants. We can't say, oh my God, that's unconstitutional, the law says this, and then turn around and do the same thing with Second Amendment. My thing with sanctuary cities should be, we need to vote these people out. Remember what I said to you, if you're not doing what you're doing, vote them out. I don't care, Republican, Democrat, whoever. It's more about, if Michael Bloomberg were to walk in here today, he's got 1 vote. This is why Trump won, because of people like us. And we need to take these guns, our gun rights, our Second Amendment rights, and we need to put people in office that represent us. On that, I want to say thank you very much. Contact your rep. And I've got another engagement I have to get out, but I want to say thank you for your time. Thank you to Mike and everybody who put this on. So thank you very much.